She always went on the 15th, not because anyone told her to, not because there was a reminder on her phone or a note stuck to the wall. She went because she had decided, one quiet morning, that if her body had something to give, then she would give it, every month, without fail, without anyone knowing. Whitfield General Hospital had a donation center on the ground floor, just past the main reception. It was nothing like what people imagined when they thought of giving blood. It was warm, softly lit, cream walls and wide windows that let the afternoon light pour in gently. Cushioned chairs, fresh flowers on the desk, soft music, low in the background. It felt less like a medical room and more like somewhere someone had thought very carefully about how a person should feel when they were doing something good. Grace liked it there. She would sign in, roll up her sleeve, and sit quietly while the nurse found her vein. Grace had good veins. They always told her that. Then she would watch the red move slowly through the tube. And when it was done, she would go back upstairs and continue her shift. She never thought much about where it went. That was not the point. The point was simply that somewhere in that building, someone would need what she had, and she would have already been there. She did not know that one October evening, what she had given that very month would be taken from that warm, quiet room downstairs and used to save a little boy she had not yet been told was hers. There is something you need to know about Grace. She did not grow up with softness. Her mother died when she was 12. It happened quietly one morning without warning, and after that everything in the house changed. The warmth left, the laughter left. Even the air felt different. The house stopped being a home. It became just a building, 4 walls, a roof, a place to sleep. Her father remarried quickly. The woman's name was Sylvia, her stepmother. Sylvia was very good at pretending. At school pickup, she smiled wide and hugged Grace in front of everyone. At dinner parties, she laughed at all the right moments. People liked her very much. But the moment the front door closed and the guests were gone, Sylvia changed. Every time, like taking off a coat she only wore in public. Grace watched this happen so many times that she stopped being shocked by it. She learned to be quieter, smaller, less noticeable. She became like a ghost in her own house. Her little sister Lily was only 9 when their mother died. Grace became the one who checked her homework, braided her hair in the mornings, and sat outside her bedroom door on the nights when Lily cried from bad dreams. Grace was 12 years old and already learning that real love shows up even when it costs you something. Their father saw none of it. Or maybe he saw it and chose Sylvia anyway. Grace was never sure which one hurt more. Then their father died too. His will was short and clean and terrible. Everything went to Sylvia. Nothing for Grace, nothing for Lily. Not even a small note. Just a legal document that said, in the cold language of lawyers, what their father had never had the courage to say out loud. Grace was 19. Lily was 16. They were asked to leave the only house they had ever known. Grace packed 2 bags. She took Lily's hand and walked out without looking back. Not because it did not hurt. It hurt so much she could barely breathe. But she knew that if she looked back, something inside her would break. And she could not afford to break. Not with Lily's hand in hers. The years that followed were not dramatic. They were just hard. Grace cleaned other people's houses. She washed dishes in restaurant kitchens where the work never stopped. She made everyone else's life run smoothly, while her own stayed held together by a thread. She and Lily shared one small, rented room for 3 years, then a tiny flat, then a slightly bigger one. Progress was slow, but it came. Grace made sure of it. Lily was bright and funny and full of life. She was grateful to Grace in a way that went deeper than words. Not just grateful for what Grace gave her, grateful that Grace was still there, that Grace had not left the way everyone else had. They built something together, small but real, something that was theirs. And then one ordinary Tuesday, Lily collapsed. Grace was at work when the phone rang. She left without saying a word to anyone and took 3 buses to the hospital where Lily had been rushed. It was a sister branch of Whitfield General, same hospital group, different location. When she arrived, Lily was unconscious. The doctors used words like kidney failure and dialysis and transplant list. Big cold words that did not care at all that Grace had nothing left to give. Because she was a member of Whitfield General's staff, the hospital gave her a discount on the bill. But even with the discount, the amount on that paper was still more than she had. She sat alone in the waiting room that night, holding it like a sentence she could not appeal. She went through every option she could think of. One by one, she crossed them all out. The next morning, she went to work at Whitfield General because she could not afford to lose her job. She was exhausted and hollowed out and running on nothing. And there, on the notice board in the staff room, she saw a small flyer. Egg donation. Anonymous. Private. Payment made immediately. Grace did not sleep that night. She sat with that flyer and thought very carefully. She was honest with herself. This was not a sacrifice. It was a trade, something from her body in exchange for her sister's life. By morning, she had made her decision. She signed the forms. She attended the appointments. Everything was handled through the fertility wing right there at Whitfield General. And when it was done, she told herself it was finished. She did not let herself imagine a child. She did not ask where the donation would go or what would come from it, because imagining would have made it real. And if it was real, she did not know how she would carry it. So she put it away, deep inside herself, in the part she did not open, and she kept going. Lily lived. She recovered slowly and then fully, and that was the only victory Grace allowed herself to hold. The years passed. Grace kept working and kept surviving. She walked past the donation center one afternoon and stopped at the door. She stepped inside and looked around at the soft light and the fresh flowers and the quiet dignity of the place. She read the notice on the wall. One regular blood donor, it said, could help save multiple lives a year right here in this building. She walked to the desk and booked her first appointment. She had not missed a single month since. Grace had been at Whitfield General for a few years when she first met Noah. He was 6 years old, and he came in holding a toy dinosaur with both hands and serious eyes that looked at everything like he was trying to understand something important. He asked questions no 6-year-old had any business asking. Why do people cry when they are happy? Do you think hospitals remember all the people who got better here? If someone loves you and then goes away, does the love go away too, or does it stay somewhere? Grace answered every single question honestly. She spoke to him the way you speak to someone whose questions matter. Because they did. He had been admitted 3 times that year. Each time he came back with his dinosaur and his serious eyes and his questions. Each time he found Grace. She did not know who his father was at first. Then one afternoon she turned a corner and almost walked into him. He was tall and quiet, carrying Noah's dinosaur, which Noah had left on a chair in the corridor. He looked like someone who had been through something very hard and was still quietly finding his way through it. Grief lived in the way he stood. He looked at her for a moment. "You must be the nurse Noah talks about," he said, "the one who answers all his questions." "I try," Grace said. "Thank you," he said, and he meant it in a way that had nothing to do with politeness. His name was Adam Whitfield. He owned the hospital. He had lost his wife 18 months before. He started coming earlier on the days Noah was admitted. A cup of tea appeared on the counter near Grace one morning without explanation. A quiet goodnight at the end of a long shift. Small things, careful things. Then one evening they sat in the family room at the end of the ward and talked. At first about nothing important. Books. The strange quality of hospital light at night. And then about bigger things, about loss. About the quiet hard work of continuing to live after something inside you has broken. Grace realized at some point that she had laughed more in the last 2 hours than in the last 2 years. Adam realized it too. He looked at her across the table. "You are the first person who has made it feel like there is air in the world again," he said. "I am just doing my job," she said quietly. "No," Adam said. "You are not." Neither of them moved, but something had been named, and named things have a way of growing, whether you mean them to or not. It was Noah who pushed first. Of course it was. One morning he looked between Grace and his father with the expression of someone who had been patient long enough. "You two should just get married," he said. "Then Grace never has to leave." Adam looked at the ceiling. Grace turned to check something on the monitor that did not need checking. Noah settled himself against the pillow and said, "I'll wait." That afternoon, Adam found Grace in the corridor. "He is not subtle," Adam said. "No," she agreed. Then Adam said quietly, "He is also not wrong. I do not know what to call this yet, but I know I do not want you to leave, and I know that has nothing to do with this hospital." Grace looked at him for a long moment, and then, very quietly, she smiled. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His hand stayed at her cheek for just a moment. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Softly. Briefly. The way you kiss someone when you have been wanting to for a long time, and you finally stop finding reasons not to. When he pulled back, they were both very still. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing to say that the kiss had not already said better. On the 15th of that October, Grace did what she always did on that day. She went downstairs to the donation center on her lunch break. She settled into one of the comfortable chairs by the warm window. She rolled up her sleeve. She watched the red move slowly through the tube. Then she went back upstairs and continued her shift. That evening, Noah collapsed. It started as a virus, but it had done something to his blood. His heart rate dropped. The doctors moved quickly and quietly in the way that doctors move when something is serious, and they do not want the parent to see how serious it is. Adam stood in the corridor with his arms crossed over his chest, which was how Grace now knew he held himself together when something was threatening to fall apart. The doctor's name was Dr. Ellis. He had calm eyes, the kind of calm that costs something. "His blood type is rare," Dr. Ellis told them. "We need to transfuse urgently." He paused. "There was a donation this afternoon that matches. We can use it now." They did, and it worked. A nurse named Margaret was working through the transfusion records that evening when she stopped. She pulled up the details of the blood donor. Then, following routine process, she cross-referenced it against Noah's file. His record showed he was donor conceived, through the fertility wing 7 years ago. She looked at the egg donor details on file. She looked at the blood donor details from that afternoon. Same name, same woman. She called Dr. Ellis. He came quickly, read everything, and went still in the way that doctors go still when something has just revealed itself to them. In 20 years of practice, he had never seen anything like it. The woman who had given her eggs 7 years ago to save her sister's life had been walking these same corridors every single day without knowing. And that very afternoon, on her lunch break, she had gone downstairs and given her blood to save the son she never knew she had. He set the file down carefully on the desk, the way you set down something you cannot afford to drop. Adam had stepped out to make a phone call. He came back to find staff speaking in low voices near the nurse's station, and Grace sitting alone in the corridor, perfectly still, with her arms folded in her lap. "What has happened?" he said. They looked at Dr. Ellis. Dr. Ellis looked at Grace. "Miss Grace," he said gently, "about 7 years ago, did you ever donate eggs through the fertility wing here at Whitfield General?" The corridor went so silent, Grace could hear the light humming above her head. She looked at the floor, then at Dr. Ellis. Then very slowly, she looked at Adam. "Yes," she said. One word, barely a whisper, but it moved through that corridor like something enormous. Dr. Ellis laid the open file on the counter between them. The blood type, the donor records, the timeline. He paused. "There is very strong evidence that Noah is your son." Grace came apart, not loudly. She had spent 20 years learning how not to come apart loudly. She pressed both hands over her mouth, closed her eyes, and the tears came in a way that had nothing to do with sadness. For years, she had been going downstairs on the 15th and giving without knowing. She had never been trying to find him. She had simply been showing up the way she always had, giving what she had, not because anyone was watching or because anyone would ever know. And it had been going to Noah all along. Adam did not try to fix it. He did not reach for the right words because he understood there were no right words for this. He moved his chair closer to hers and stayed. Then he put his arms around her and held her while she wept. He did not say it would be all right. He did not say anything at all. He just held on. When she could finally speak, her voice was barely a whisper. "I did not know there would be a child. I only knew my sister was dying, and I had nothing else left to give. I never let myself imagine. I thought not knowing was the only way I could survive it." Adam pulled back just enough to look at her face. Then he kissed her forehead, slowly, like a promise, like the beginning of something that was going to last a very long time. They told Noah on a Sunday morning. They sat on the floor of his hospital room, warm light coming through the window. They were gentle. They used simple words. They went slowly. Noah listened with his dinosaur in his lap and his serious eyes on their faces. When they finished, the room was very quiet. Then Noah stood up, walked to Grace, and climbed into her arms the way he always did. Without hesitation, he pressed his face into her shoulder. "I already knew you were mine," he said. "I just did not know the reason." Grace held him and did not try to speak. Some things do not need words. They just need to be held. It was 3 days later that the doors of Whitfield General opened and they wheeled Sylvia in. Her stepmother. The same woman who had smiled wide at school gates and been someone else entirely behind closed doors. The same woman who had stood in a lawyer's office and taken everything that should have gone to 2 daughters who had just lost their father. Grace saw her before Sylvia saw her. She almost did not recognize her. All the performance was gone. What was left was just a person, small, frightened, sick in the way that strips everything away and leaves only the bare truth of a human being. Sylvia's eyes found Grace across the corridor. She went completely still on the trolley. Something passed through Grace. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something quieter than either. Then she walked over. "I have got her," she said to the nurse beside her. And she took the trolley herself. She did not make a speech. She did not list the years or mention the house or the will or the cold morning she had walked away with Lily's hand in hers. She simply did her job. With the same quiet steadiness she brought to everything. She made sure Sylvia was seen quickly. She sat with her through the frightening parts. She brought her water. She checked on her between her other duties without being asked. When the bill arrived and Sylvia's face fell apart with the panic of someone who had no one to call, Grace stepped outside and made one phone call. Adam did not ask questions. He simply said, "Taken care of." Sylvia wept all through it. Not in the polished way she had performed tears in public all her life. She wept the way a person weeps when something locked inside them for a very long time finally gives way completely. On the last evening before she was discharged, Grace came to sit with her and asked simply, "Is there anyone I can call for you?" There was no one. After everything, after all the years of pretending and taking what was not hers, there was no one. Sylvia looked at Grace across the room, this woman she had made invisible, this girl she had pushed out with 2 bags and no future, this person who had every reason to walk past her on that trolley and feel nothing. She could not speak for a long time. Then she said, "I am so sorry. I am deeply sorry for everything I did to you and to Lily. I was cruel. I was selfish. And neither of you deserved any of it. I have carried this shame for years, and I was too proud to say it, but I am saying it now. Please forgive me. Both of you. Please." She wept like a child after that, like someone who had held something in for so long that when it finally came out, there was no controlling it. Grace sat with her through all of it. She did not rush her. She did not look away. When it was quiet again, Grace said, "I forgive you, Sylvia, and Lily will too, because that is who we are. That is who our mother raised us to be." Sylvia left the hospital on a Tuesday morning and stood outside for a long time. She was the same person who had been wheeled through those doors. But something had shifted, deep and permanent. The way foundations shift. You cannot see it from the outside, but the whole building knows. She had spent 20 years holding tightly to things that were never really hers. And in 3 quiet days, her stepdaughter had given her something she had never earned and did not deserve. For the first time, she wanted to be better, not for appearances, just because Grace had shown her, without saying a single word about it, that it was still possible. Then came the letter from the medical school. Lily had sat the entrance exams in secret. She had studied alone, quietly, in the evenings, and told no one. She got in, full scholarship, every year covered, medicine. The same Lily who had nearly died in a hospital. The same girl Grace had carried through years of hardship. That girl was going to become a doctor. Grace sat on the floor of her flat and cried for a long time after Lily called. Not from sadness, from something she had no name for yet, something that felt like all the hard years finally meaning something. A few months later, the wedding was on a Saturday morning in early autumn. The garden at Whitfield Manor had turned gold. The air had that particular October quality that makes everything look like a memory while it is still happening, like the world is already saving it for you. It was not grand. No orchestra. No hundreds of guests in expensive clothes. Just the people who mattered, standing in the gold light of a garden that had been too quiet for too long. Adam stood at the front, wearing the expression of a man who cannot quite believe his own luck and has decided to spend the rest of his life being worthy of it. Grace walked through the garden in a dress the color of warm cream, with Lily on one side and an empty space on the other. A space she had chosen to leave open for her mother, for everyone she had carried and lost along the way. And there was Noah, standing at the front in a small suit he had selected himself with tremendous seriousness, holding the rings in both hands, his face arranged in the expression of someone who fully understands the weight of their role. The officiant reached the traditional part of the ceremony. If anyone has any objection to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. Noah's hand went up immediately. The entire garden went silent. Adam closed his eyes briefly. Grace pressed her lips together very carefully. Noah looked around at everyone watching him, completely comfortable with the attention, and said, "I object because she already belongs to us. She just forgot for a little while, and I think everyone should know that I figured it out first." Laughter broke open across the whole garden, the kind that has been waiting a long time to be released. Lily laughed until she cried. Adam's best man had to sit down. Even the officiant forgot himself entirely. And Grace laughed with her whole body, the way she had not laughed since before her mother died, the way she had stopped believing she was still allowed to. When the laughter finally settled and the vows were said, the officiant smiled and said, "You may kiss your bride." Adam looked at Grace the way he always did, steadily, completely, like she was the most solid thing in his world. Then he cupped her face in both hands and kissed her, and the whole garden was quiet for one perfect moment. The kind of quiet that only comes when something has finally, completely arrived. She had come to this place with 2 bags and no expectations. She was not leaving. She was never leaving again. Life had not replaced what she had lost. It had returned it, slowly, quietly, in forms she never could have imagined. A boy with serious eyes who grabbed her hand before he even knew her name. A man who moved his chair closer and stayed. A sister who was still breathing and now wore a white coat and saved lives the way Grace had once saved hers. And 1 floor below the wards of Whitfield General, a warm and softly lit room with fresh flowers on the desk and a comfortable chair by the window, still waiting. She would still go. That would never change. Because that was who she was. That had always been who she was. A woman who showed up, who gave quietly, who did not wait to be asked and did not need anyone to know. Standing in that gold autumn garden, surrounded by the people she loved and the life she had built from the ruins of everything taken from her, Grace understood something she had never allowed herself to believe before. She was not someone who had survived. She was someone who had arrived. If you enjoyed this love story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more heartfelt tales. Your support helps us continue creating the stories that make your heart race.